Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast.
Today we're looking at Novo Nordisk.
As usual, before we start, subscribe, like, and comment to this video to support the show. And if there's a specific company you want us to look into, leave it in the comments below.
So let's get into the analysis.
Yeah, let's do it. When you look at Novo Nordisk's numbers recently, it's just staggering. The growth is almost hard to comprehend.
It really is. I mean, we're witnessing something pretty historic. Their 2024 revenue came in at nearly 294.2 billion Danish krone.
And the growth rate on that.
That's the truly shocking part. It represents a 31% year-over-year increase.
31%. For a company of that size, it's almost unheard of in pharma.
It is, and we all know where it's coming from. It's the GLP-1 story.
Right, the weight loss drugs.
Right.
Wegovy specifically has just completely changed the game for them.
Exactly. And if you break down the numbers by segment, it gets even clearer. The obesity care division, which is Wegovy, and the older drug, Saxenda, it almost doubled. The revenue almost doubled in 2024 alone.
Wow. So they're clearly past those initial supply problems and are now just scaling at an incredible rate.
They are. But here's what I think is even more important for investors, maybe more than just the top-line revenue.
Okay.
It's the operating leverage. Their operating profit is actually growing faster than their revenue.
And what does that signal? Why is that so critical?
It's the sign of a truly great, scalable business. It means for every new patient they treat, the cost to do so is dropping.
So their fixed costs, R&D, factories, all that are being spread across a much, much larger sales base.
Precisely. And you can see it directly in their margins.
I saw that number. It was pretty eye-popping.
Yeah, the gross profit margin hit 83.8% in the first quarter of 2025.
83.8. You know, most pharma companies would be thrilled with something in the low 70s.
Absolutely. When you're running at almost 84%, you're basically a cash-generating machine. And that brings us to the balance sheet.
Which you've called a fortress.
It is. They ended 2024 with a substantial net cash position. So more cash on hand than total debt.
Which means they don't need anyone's permission to expand or make a strategic acquisition.
Exactly. And that flows directly into their free cash flow. In Q1 of 2025 alone, they generated 42.1 billion Danish krone in free cash.
And the projections for that are even crazier, right?
They are. Some analysts think their annual free cash flow could almost double by 2030, up to around 145.5 billion. It's a level of cash generation that very few companies on Earth can match.
Okay, so they're swimming in cash. What are they doing with it all?
It's a really smart, three-pronged approach. First, reinvestment, and I mean aggressive reinvestment.
Now aggressive.
They have earmarked 65 billion krone for capital expenditures this year. That's almost $10 billion US.
And that's all for expanding production.
All for building out more GLP-1 capacity. They know the bottleneck right now isn't demand, it's supply.
Right, so they're spending billions to widen their lead and lock out competitors who can't keep up.
That's the offensive move. But they are forgetting shareholders.
So buybacks and dividends.
Yep. A 30 billion krone share repurchase program for 2025, and they're projecting dividend growth of 10% or more annually.
So they're doing everything at once, investing for growth, buying back stock, and raising the dividend.
And they can do it all comfortably because the cash flow is just accelerating so quickly.
Let's zoom out a bit then, because a story this good always attracts competition. What is their actual competitive moat?
It's really built on three pillars. The first is intellectual property, the patents.
Okay.
The core semaglutide compound is protected until 2031 in the United States. But, and this is key, the delivery systems, the injector pens, have patents that run out to 2035.
So that gives them a really long runway of protected sales. And they just had a big win on the IP front in Asia, didn't they?
A huge win. The China Supreme People's Court upheld their main semaglutide patent.
Which is a massive deal.
It's monumental. Validating their IP in the world's second biggest pharma market is a huge signal about the global strength of their position.
Okay, so IP is pillar one. What's pillar two?
Manufacturing scale. This, to me, is maybe even stronger than the patents.
Why is that?
They control over 90% of the global production of semaglutide API.
And for anyone listening, API is the active pharmaceutical ingredient. It's the actual drug itself.
Right. And controlling the supply chain for it is incredibly difficult and expensive. Because they have that 90% control, it gives them at least a 24-month head start on anyone trying to make a biosimilar.
2 full years. So a competitor can't just flip a switch. They'd need to spend billions and wait years just to get to where Novo is today.
And by then, Novo will be even further ahead. It's a massive barrier to entry.
So that leads us to the next big thing. The injection is a blockbuster, but the real inflection point seems to be the oral version.
The daily oral Wegovy pill,
Right.
yes. The FDA approval for that is the next true game changer.
And it's planned for launch in early 2026.
That's the plan. And this could fundamentally reaccelerate the whole story.
Because it opens up the market to people who just don't want to do injections.
Exactly. There's a huge pool of patients out there who are needle averse. The psychological barrier of a weekly shot is real.
So the convenience factor is expected to drive just a massive wave of new users.
The volume potential is enormous. It just removes that point of friction. It's the key to unlocking the full potential of this underpenetrated global market.
And they're also looking beyond just semaglutide, right? I saw they made some acquisitions.
They did about $6.7 billion in combined deals in the metabolic space.
So this is about more than just weight loss.
Yes, they're expanding their footprint. They're looking at things like NASH, which is a fatty liver disease. They just had positive phase 2 data for a candidate there.
So they see the underlying science as a platform they can build on.
That's the idea. It's a platform, not just a single product.
Which is smart, because we have to talk about the risks. And the biggest one is obviously the competition.
Oh, absolutely. This is not a monopoly, it's a duopoly, and the other player is Eli Lilly.
With Mounjaro and Zepbound.
Correct. And Lilly is coming on strong. They're projected to hit nearly $95 billion in revenue by 2027. This is going to be a slugfest.
And that kind of competition always leads to pricing pressure.
It's already happening. Novo has had to cut prices in the US and in China.
And there's a political risk, too, with Medicare negotiations.
That's a big one. The potential for GLP-1s to be included in Medicare Part D price negotiations could happen as early as 2026.
Which would squeeze margins for both companies in their biggest market.
It would.
So how do they fight that? If prices are coming down, how do they keep profits growing?
Pure volume and scale. The market is just expanding so fast, especially with the oral pill coming, that the sheer number of new patients is expected to more than offset any margin compression.
And their manufacturing scale lets them be the low-cost producer if it comes to a price war.
Exactly. They can afford to compete on price in a way smaller players simply can't.
What about the risk of being so concentrated? I think semaglutide is something like 89% of their revenue.
It's a valid concern. That's a lot of eggs in one basket.
So what are they doing about it?
They're pumping up the R&D budget up 15% year over year, and they have 5 next-gen combination therapies in phase 2 trials.
Things like amycretin.
Yes. They're trying to develop the drugs that will eventually replace their current blockbusters. They're trying to stay ahead of Lilly.
Speaking of the pipeline, there was that disappointment with the Alzheimer's trial.
Yeah, the phase 3 failure of semaglutide for Alzheimer's was a setback, for sure.
So is the door closed on using these drugs for brain-related conditions?
Most experts don't think so. They see it not as a total failure, but as a sign that a combination approach might be needed for neurology. It keeps the door open, even if it pushes the timeline out.
Okay, let's shift to the stock itself. After a pretty big correction last year, it started to rebound. What are the technicals looking like?
The chart setup is actually looking very constructive. Analysts are pointing to a potential cup-and-handle reversal pattern.
And for anyone who doesn't follow charts, what does that mean?
It's basically a U-shaped recovery followed by a small pullback, which often signals that the selling pressure is exhausted and the stock is getting ready for a new leg up.
And there was a big momentum signal that just flashed, too.
The golden cross, yeah. That's when the 50-day moving average crosses above the 200-day. It's a classic technical signal that often precedes a major long-term uptrend.
And it seems like big institutions are buying into that signal.
They are. We're seeing major funds accumulating shares on that weakness in 2025. They clearly see the long-term story.
But the biggest vote of confidence, for me, was the insider buy.
Oh, that was huge. The CEO bought 21,500 shares in February of 2025.
And it was the first time he'd bought shares in years, right?
The first reported insider buy since 2022. When the person who knows the company better than anyone puts their own money on the line after a dip, that's about as strong a signal as you can get.
So looking ahead, what's the next big thing for investors to watch?
All eyes are on execution now. The Q4 earnings report in early February 2026 is the big one.
For guidance on the oral Wegovy launch.
Exactly. How fast can they ramp up supply, and what does the insurance coverage look like? That's what everyone wants to know.
So to wrap it all up, the thesis is really still intact.
I think so. It's a dominant growth story. You have incredible fundamentals, a strong financial position, and a manufacturing moat that's just almost impossible to breach in the short term.
And it all really hinges on one thing.
The launch of that oral pill. If they execute that well, it unlocks years of compounding growth and should let them navigate the competitive pressures from Lilly. This is more than just a stock. This company is fundamentally changing how we treat an entire category of disease. The real question is, what's next? Heart failure, other metabolic conditions. That's the long-term potential here.
A really incredible story. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to subscribe to Investing Talk podcast for more detailed looks into the market's biggest stories.